Coogs House. All right, picture it now. You wake up Sunday morning, you get the Sunday paper, you check the scores, and the Houston Cougars have pulled it off. They upset Vegas and beat the Oklahoma Sooners on Saturday night. How do they do it? How can they do it? You're going to understand in just a second.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making it your first listen each and every day. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below which sock you put on first. Trust me, there's one you put on first more than the other. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. More on that fun later if you're trying to get to Norman for this one. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. I want to talk about the long-term implications for this game. I want to reiterate those before we get into the weekend and get to play it. I want to talk some about the quarterback situation and what we can expect there. But first and foremost, I want to tell you why Houston can pull off the upset this weekend over Oklahoma. Now, I will stress the Vegas line is in the upper 20s. It's been fluctuating between 26 and 29 in those ranges, right? Houston's going to Norman. That's not an easy place to play. Fritz has done very well there in the past. But there's a world where Houston pulls this off. I want to stress that Oklahoma has lost to smaller athletic departments. Houston's in the Big 12 now. It's no longer a Group of 5 program, obviously, but Oklahoma's lost these games plenty of times in their history, even when they've got really good teams. And I would argue this isn't one of their best ones. I got 5 things that will happen if Houston pulls this off. And I want to talk through what those 5 things are, right? The first thing is getting after Jackson Arnold. Now, Jackson Arnold is a 5-star, all everything, did so great in high school at Denton Guyer High School, which is a big 6A, I think, program in the DFW Metro. I mean, like it's a perennial power in Texas high school football. Jackson Arnold also is a true sophomore. He also played last year, and he played in their bowl game, and frankly was less than impressive as far as some of the key clutch moments in that bowl game. He played throughout the season before that, some in garbage time kind of situations. And while he had good raw stats in the bowl game against Arizona in the Alamo Bowl, or was it Arizona in the Alamo Bowl? He truthfully, I think, kind of choked a little bit at different parts of that as well. When I look at Jackson Arnold as a young quarterback, I think of how much experience Houston has in their secondary. Latrell McCutcheon, a former Oklahoma cornerback, right, coming into this game, being able to be a little deceptive in this one. If they can get after Jackson Arnold, I think isn't going to make bad decisions. Keith Cooper, right, I think will be an impact player. Brandon Mack, I think will be an impact player in this game. The Oklahoma offensive line looks like one of their weak points. That's going to be really, really important. The second thing that will happen if Houston pulls this off is that their defensive backfield, the secondary, will win one-on-one matchups with Oklahoma's receivers. Oklahoma's receivers are not the CD Lambs of the world that I think we think of from the once upon a time times. Deion Burks is a transfer in as a junior. He was, I guess, at Purdue, which is a Big Ten program, but not known for putting out high caliber receivers. Brennan Thompson's another one of the receivers. He started off at Texas and won getting to play. He transfers to Oklahoma. They've got Jaleel Farouk, I think, is a little dinged. They don't have the kind of receiver room we're used to seeing these guys. They've graduated some, transferred out some, and they're kind of piecemealing it together to play with Jackson here. And I think that that's an advantage for Houston because the experience they've got between Halsey, McCutcheon, Juwan Gaston has a bunch of junior college experience at a high level as well. Coming into play for Houston, I really thought the secondary was really, really impressive in the UNLV game, even though the loss, obviously not what we wanted out of it. I think if Houston pulls this off. The secondary wins those matchups, and I don't think that's that crazy. The third thing that Houston has to do to win this game and make sure they pull this off is keep the snap count low. Take full every 40 second, every 25 second, take every second off the play clock. Really let the clock roll as best you can on defense. Oklahoma has explosive athletes at a lot of positions. I know I just talked about the receivers not being as good as they used to be, but they are a school that has a bunch of 4 and 5 star kids, right? The more snaps you have, the more snaps you give, potential for athletes to out athlete, right? And those kind of things. Houston's got good athletes. Houston's got getting better athletes. And frankly, there are some spots where I feel like Houston's really just young, not unathletic, obviously, right? But you still want to keep the snap count low because that's why the spread is what it is, right? That's why Oklahoma is the big favorites because they've got those names and those stars next to those names that people put a lot of weight into. We know Houston's won these games before, right? It's been a minute, but we've won these games before. We didn't have all those stars. We know Willie Fritz has won those games where he didn't have all those stars. And part of the way you do that is by negating that advantage by taking the snap count down. You don't try and outrun them, right? You try and have a limited amount of runs, right? Other thing is, obviously, you can say this about every game, but the fourth thing Houston's got to do if they want to pull this off and pull off the upset is win the turnover battle. They've got to win the turnover battle. That you can say about any college football game, obviously, right? But truthfully, if you look at like what Oklahoma has done against Temple last week, or really under Brent Venables in general, right? They win games by having a great defense that gets them the ball back. Their offense last week was not impressive in terms of having long drives, but they didn't have very long fields. Their defense, frankly, was very boom and bust. I know they only gave up 3 points to Temple, but they also forced a bunch of turnovers. They kind of go for the gamble a lot. You can get by them if you play solid. And, frankly, if you make their offense march across a whole field, again, I like Houston's chances. Keep the turnover battle in your favor. That works out for Houston. That's what Houston's got to do to pull this off. And the fifth and final thing is something they did not do against UNLV, but they've got to find something in this game to hang their hat on. I've been beating this drum since the show started almost 2 years ago at this point, whether it was under Shannon Dawson or the lack of an offensive coordinator last year or last week against UNLV. Houston's got to have an identity of we know we can get 2 or 3 yards, 4 yards maybe on every single time we run this play. This is not a moving backwards play. You need to have that. A mediocre offense has a version of that. A good offense has a great version of that. An explosive offense has one of those that they don't have to think about, right? You have to have that. Houston has not had that, frankly, since Alden McCaskill left, we're being really honest. And you've got to have something there. It's typically in the run game. That's why I went back to Alton in my head. But you've got to have something where you go, okay, it is 3rd and 2. We're running this again in the first. All right. It is first down in the play. At time of the game, we got to kind of use some clock or kind of like establish something here. We're going to come to this twice in this drive, right? You've got to have those instances. Okay. I thought with Barbay coming, it would be simple power over the right guard. They ran that a lot of Mississippi State. We'll see what that turns into for this offense. If this offense is going to be successful, there's going to need to be a hang your hat on it kind of play. And I think that if Houston's going to pull this off, and I think they can, that's where this is going to happen. Now, I tell you every week, I talk myself into winning the game by Friday, no matter who. We could be playing the AFC Pro Bowl team. I don't care who we're playing. I'm going to talk myself into it by Friday. Right now, I've talked myself into a 24-21, maybe even a 20-17 kind of game. Low scoring, long drives, long possessions, 1 or 2 explosive kind of all of a sudden no one's catching Parker Jenkins, or all of a sudden Joseph Manjack breaks 3 tackles, or a couple of those plays flip this game on its head, not unlike the kick 6 from 2016, right? And then suddenly it's in our favor, right? Now, along the way there, Houston's going to have to get solid quarterback play. And I think there's some things we can expect to happen this weekend at the quarterback position. And so I want to talk about that in a moment. But first, We're talking about, a guy with a brand new job at Houston and Willie Fritz. Houston hired the right guy. If you're looking to hire the right person for your job when you're hiring for your small business, you got to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools you need to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It is not just a job board. It helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who are not actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in all the wrong places. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats that they might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why they're constantly finding new ways to make the process easier. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so what kind of things can you expect out of the quarterback this weekend? I think the quarterback's been the hot button topic all week long. There are people that think Donovan's fine. He needs more time from the offensive line. There are people that think they ain't got a quarterback on campus. Wait for Austin Carlisle, who, by the way, Austin Carlisle had a great high school game Thursday night, 2025 Cougar commit, Chas Carlisle. You also have people that look at, oh, who cares about this season? It's all rebuilding. There are people that say, hey, why didn't Zion Chris get to throw the ball? There are still other people, and this is frankly a larger group, that think Uyale, after having garbage time runs that have and garbage time success in a couple games last season and now also this season, deserves more clock, more snaps. I think there's some validity, frankly, to all of those positions, but let's go through a little bit. Out of the quarterback position this weekend, I don't think it's unreasonable, even on the road, even in Norman, to expect Houston to have a more calm presence from that position, right? Donovan Smith has played in these big stadiums before. He was a starter for several games at Texas Tech before coming to Houston. We also saw him play in some hostile environments last year, right? It also, for what it's worth, is not the first game anymore. I say in college football all the time, college football week one is a crapshoot in a lot of ways. But one key reason is there is no preseason games like there are in pro football, right? There are no scrimmages between schools like there are in high-level high school football. You play yourself, you play yourself, you play yourself. Now you're playing somebody else, live bullets under the lights with the cameras on, right? That's a big jump. Donovan Smith, you'll also remember, did not participate physically. He was doing mental reps, but did not physically participate in spring practice, right? So again, this is the kind of situation where his first live action in a lot of different ways was against UNLV. It's his first live action with a new playbook. It was his first live action with this set of skill positions. He lost two of his most talented receivers off of last year's group, right? All of that played a role. He frankly lost his left tackle. He lost his center. There's communication between him and the center that's obviously got to get better, right? Pancake's a great center. He's a great interior offensive lineman, one of the highest ranked to ever come to the University of Houston, right? But also, those two guys got to be on the same page because protection's got to give Donovan the time to throw, right? You hope after a week of game film to break down and a week more of preparation and frankly a full game worth of reps last week, that things are shifting towards a more comfortable spot for all of them, right? I also, and I've said this since beating the drum when we came back from the game after the weekend, think Donovan needs to be fully used. Donovan's a better passer than he gets credit for. I'm not saying he's not. I think it's easy to get upset about him because quarterback's the easiest position to blame everything on, right? However, Donovan's legs are a very serious part of what makes him a special athlete. Donovan's ability to run through, around, and frankly even hurdle over defenders are what make him special, right? If Houston's going to have a chance, Donovan's going to need to be special. If Donovan's going to be special, he's going to have called runs. He's just going to. And that's not really an option. It's not, frankly, even a matter of my opinion. It's just the way it has to happen. When Donovan's been successful, he's also been running the football. I'm not saying don't throw it. I'm far from it. he has to also do that. That's part of what makes him special. And frankly, as Thursday night's game between the Chiefs and Ravens will show you, it's also what like people were talking about as a pro prospect about before was he had both of these elements to his game, right? Now, all of that said, that's perfect role Donovan. And I have no reason to not want him to do well. I want whoever's taking the snap to do well for Houston, right? But I would also point out that we were told they'd be rotating quarterbacks through. We were told they'd be rotating every position through in the preseason, right? And as we get to Oklahoma week, last week we saw Zeon Chris for very limited reps. We were told he got dinged up. We were also told throughout practice this week he's getting better. I anticipate seeing more Zeon Chris this week. He's a more electric runner than Donovan when given the chance. It's also his second game in the system. It's also his second game against live bullets. Well, he hasn't played necessarily in these stadiums like they got in Norman, Oklahoma as often. He is the kind of athlete that I feel like we'll see a little bit more out of. I need to see him given the chance to throw the football. I also need to see that from a play calling perspective. And then last but not least, UELA. Now, UELA, I will say, I think whenever a team is losing, the most popular person on campus is the backup quarterback, right? That's a very common thing in college football. But also, when given the opportunity against backups, he's done well more often than he has not. I think a lot of people are focused on Sam Houston last year and that final touchdown pass he threw this year against UNLV without thinking about like UCF and other games in between there. But I would point out that doesn't necessarily mean I'm not jumping onto the ULA needs to start train. I think that's relatively fast. And frankly, I don't want a team where they're doing any major decision like that quickly at all, right? If I had a backup left tackle play well for one series of garbage time, I don't need him to get 75 snaps the next game. I kind of want to work it in more. And I feel the same way about quarterbacks, right? We have shown last week that he can make a decision really quickly. Now, it might not be the right decision every time. We'll see what it looks like against live bullets and first team guys and so on. But I think that necessitates maybe having that drive happen when the score is only a 2-score game or a little bit earlier in maybe a first half, right? Working those things in. Willie Fritz has said we're going to rotate guys through more. I think you got to stick to that. And while he's still listed as the third string quarterback, you're playing your third string running back and you're talking about how much you're rotating guys through. And if you're going to rotate quarterbacks at all, which I understand the entire philosophy about not doing, but if you're going to do it at all, I feel like you need to make sure you rotate all the guys that need a chance. Now, I need to see more before starting him. I want to be very clear. Donovan has earned the right to be the starter of this team, and he has not lost that right yet. Full stop. But I also think that if you're going to talk about rotating, you can't just rotate Zeon, right? You got to rotate all the guys that can play. And that's where I think we're at that point on the quarterback situation. Now, if Wheat comes in the second quarter, puts a good drive in against that Oklahoma defense, which at this point looks like it might be one of the best defense Houston plays all year. Then we'll have other conversations, right? Then we're talking, okay, do we make a change at halftime? Like suddenly you're talking, okay, something different, right? But to now, he's played well against backups more than half the time, and so I think it's worth pointing out that like we need to give him that shot. Right? If we're really going to rotate guys, if we're not going to rotate guys, there's validity to that as well. But if we're going to rotate, we kind of need to really rotate, right? And then may the best guy win. Now, with all of that said, I want to talk about why this game is so important in the big picture for Houston, what it means to this season, what it means to the Willie Fritz tenure, and kind of talk about why this game is a bar or a bar of measurement. But first, I would point out that Norman, Oklahoma is not that far away. Okay, it's not super close either. But if you're trying to get there and get tickets, the best place to get your last minute tickets is on the Game Time app. They got all kinds of different filters and things like that to make sure you're in the best section for whatever kind of a view you want. If you're a 50-yard line kind of guy, if you're an end zone kind of guy, whatever the case may be, they can help you find that as well. They can show you what the view looks like from that section and row. You just click on the seat and they'll show you from it for that venue, for that thing. And they don't just have football tickets. They've got concerts, theater, comedy shows, baseball, basketball, football, anything you need a ticket to in Houston, around Houston, or wherever you are at, they've got it for you. And they got the lowest price guarantee. If you can find tickets in the same section and row somewhere else for less, they'll credit you back 110% of the difference. So go to Game Time and download Game Time app today to take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app today and create an account using code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What game is it? It is Game Time. All right, so I talked about this some earlier, and it continues to get fleshed out in my head. But the faster we approach 2024's Houston, Oklahoma game, the more I feel like this is kind of an ultimate measuring stick for Houston. And that is regardless of the outcome. I think Houston's got a chance to pull this off and really turn this around. I really do. I know I talk myself into it by every Friday, but I think that there's a chance this happens. And that, frankly, I talk myself into it every week, and I was right 4 times last year. Dang it. But I would also point out that much like Houston's trying to showcase what they have to recruits and stuff this year, the truth is that Oklahoma's probably got the best defense Houston will play this year. They're, 5 teams on their schedule that were preseason top 25 and all that. But Oklahoma was the one that had the best defensive identity out of any of those. Houston would have to win 6 games this year to go to a bowl, which I don't think is impossible, but it's certainly not what Vegas thought was going to happen, right? And then that could potentially change, and they could have another good defense in the bowl game, I guess, theoretically, right? But in a big picture kind of way, right? This is like the best teams you're going to play this year, and you're kind of seeing, okay, with a full off season to prepare and a game to work the kinks out of, and we hope that's what that game was. What does this team look like against one of the best teams that's going to play all year? What does this team look like against top tier competition? Because I talked to Oklahoma people this week, both Locked On Sooners, Sooner Spotlight, a couple different shows, had me on or I had them on or whatever. And Oklahoma feels like they got a real chance to make some noise in this thing, the college football playoff and the SEC, all that, right? Well, what do you look like against that? Because here's the deal. As I mentioned the other day, Houston plays Oklahoma right now. They play Oklahoma again in 2028. That is kind of the other end of this Willie Fritz experiment, right? You're looking at Houston, Oklahoma now, Houston, Oklahoma then. I don't mean to spoil it for the folks at home. Oklahoma ain't going anywhere. So it's going to consistently be the place where it's like, where were we back then? Where are we now? When these two teams match up again in 2028, we're hoping that Houston's also looking to win the Power 4 conference that they're in, Big 12 most likely, right? We're hoping that Houston's also looking to make some noise and shake things up in the college football playoff, hoping that Houston's also got their eyes on a national title, right? Looking at all of those things in 2028, right? Now, with that said, that is both a long ways away, right? There are lots of guys on the roster right now that will not be around then, and not that far away. The guys you're recruiting, the 2025 class, 2026 class, they're the upperclassmen on that team, right? And so there needs to be both a sense of, okay, we're working towards this and understanding that that is where we're heading, and a sense of urgency, like that is where we're heading soon, right? That's what I like about this game, this matchup, is that these two programs get to see each other so quickly between these two games, but also with enough breathing room in between to really be truly in a different spot at that point. There will be other tests along the way as well. In 2025, Houston goes to Oregon State. 2026, they come to Houston. 2027, they play LSU, and I believe that's scheduled to be an NRG, if I remember correctly, which is kind of a home game, kind of not, because we know LSU has a big presence in Houston. Though those barometers will also be important. LSU is an SEC school as well, I guess. They seem to have higher highs and lower lows than Oklahoma. They go a lot more up and down, whereas Oklahoma seems very steady, right? And then 2028, I believe it's set for September, like mid-September time, like week 2, week 3. Houston hosts Oklahoma. TDECU, right? All fully renovated. It'll be done by then. Frankly, they'll probably be on to the next set of whatever by then, honestly. But that's a big deal, right? These measurements, as we're looking at evaluating a rebuilding program, are really, really important because they tell you where you are and where you stack up at a big picture level. Now, obviously, we're hoping to get buku Big 12 wins in between there too, right? Let's win the conference. Let's win it this year. Why not? Why not us, right? But let's win it between now and then as well. Let's knock off Utah. Let's take it back from why is Kansas in the running for this thing? Let's do that as well, right? But this big blue blood opponent, Oklahoma, is the national program, and while it's not the 2000 Oklahoma team or whatever, this is a strong program in the present tense. I'm not as high on Venables as I would have been on Stoops in his heyday, right? But I do think that their program is steady in a way that is admirable. And I think that that's what makes this weekend really impressive and important. It also, after coming off of a lackluster week 1, is the bar for this year. It's the bounce back. It tells you a lot about your guts, your fortitude. Okay, you got your teeth kicked in last week. You got hit in the face harder than you thought you were going to. You got up, and the opponent the next week was really big. Did you get in the middle of the ring and start slugging it out? And I think you're going to see some people on the Houston Cougar team that will. I know you're going to see Willie Fritz ready to do that, right? I know you're going to see Barbay and Bell and all those guys. They're going to be ready, right? The trick will be is when we're talking about getting the right guys on the bus, getting them in the right seats, and getting the bus moving forward, is the bus full of guys that are doing that as well? I think it's full of a lot of them. I really am. And I'm not going to go through and handpick all 108 guys or whatever. But we're going to know a lot more when we do the post game on Saturday night. Looking like it's going to be just like last week, where I'll be on Locked On Houston Sports with Mike. And then we'll be back on here as well for Cougars After Dark. Hoping for good things to talk about. Not going to lie to you, I think there's a real shot at that happening. And even if there's not, Locked On Cougars is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. If looking for a second listen today, Locked On Big 12, Drake Toll, talking about all the things going on in the conference, including, I guess, UConn's officially not coming over to the conference yet. He's got it all figured out. Let's go talk to him as well. Locked On Cougs, again, proud member of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Go Cougs.